Motivations for Learning. I want to thank everyone for taking the time this morning. Those of you on the East Coast, of course, this afternoon. We have about 75 or 80 attendees at the moment. We're very gratified not only for your time this morning, but more specifically for all the time and energy that you've put into this program during the past year. We really are very pleased with where we've come this past year, and all of you have become a very important piece of that. Our agenda today is really just to say welcome to all of you and to thank you for your work, to review a little bit about our 2011-2012 accomplishments, and we also want to give a teacher the opportunity to present her own perspective on the tutoring program. We've invited one of our excellent teachers from the West Coast, Stephanie Richards in Oakland, California. Our executive director and founder, Seth Weinberger, will do a short Q&A with Stephanie to hear about her impressions, and then he himself will take over as well and give us a sense of where the organization is headed over the next year. We expect to finish the webinar just in about 45 minutes. We'll try to leave the last 10 to 15 minutes for a Q&A for all of you to ask Seth questions. I may be able to unmute your lines. If not, I can certainly take your questions. If you type them into the Citrix GoToMeeting interface, I'll see those and relay those to Seth so that he can answer your questions in that manner. I did want to start off by just giving you a quick sense of who many of us are, just to see a quick photograph of us. You should see that here. There's about, not all of us are here in this picture, but the majority of us. So we did miss Barb Goodman, but many of you have spoken to Frank. I know you've been trained by Heather. Many of you on the West Coast have been working with Carrie, or you work with Carlos as well. Michelle has been a great help, and Jackie, to all of our teachers, supporting all of our teachers across the country. So it's a great team, and I wanted you at least to see who some of us were. And we also have a number of coaches as well that work with us, particularly in the Washington, D.C. area, where we don't have our own full-time staff. Here you see Sybil Anderson and Willie Scudder on the left and on the right. They're two of our coaches. Anna Reese, we couldn't get for the photo, but she's a third coach as well. And this is one of our excellent principals in Washington, D.C., Miss Miller at Kimball Elementary School. The big news really from an accomplishment standpoint in our own minds is the fact that we were really able to bolster the number of tutoring firms, of organizations whose employees are participating with online tutoring for this past year from prior years. The year prior to this, we had 4 of these organizations. The 4 that you see in Chicago here: Chase Bank at the top of the list, Chase Bank, Bank of America, Northern Trust, and Chicago Tribune. And with the exception of those 4, all the rest of you on this list are really brand new organizations that have joined our team, and that really, really makes us quite gratified, and we know that we're able to reach a lot more kids that way. We had about 300 tutors this last year, ending the year about a year ago now, and this year we ended up with about 850 tutors. We expect to easily double that, not only because we're going to be growing in Chicago and D.C., but we're also adding some new cities as well. Seattle and Miami are 2 major cities, and we're expecting to expand in some other cities as well. The final word on those cities are not quite in yet. But we want to thank all of you in Washington, D.C. We had some government agency participation, which I want to single out. Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Coast Guard has been great. Also, the Washington Lawyers Committee has been a big help with regard to member law firms such as Paul Hastings, DLA Piper, and Crowell and Mooring, and great support from the private sector too, like ComScore and Living Social, National Geographic, Accenture, and we have a leading educational institution that was working with us at Kenilworth School at Georgetown University. Obviously, you see there's a great big list in Chicago. All of you have been a great help. Detroit, AT&T has signed on there, Comerica Bank in New York City, and we've got great help from UPS, both there and in Chicago. In LA, Nestle has been a big help in bringing us to a number of schools that it already was supporting. They do a great job with educational outreach in the Southern California area, and really all across the country. Intel tutors have been supporting us at Oakland, and you'll hear from Stephanie Richards momentarily, who is their teacher. Citrix Online in the Denver area, Chase Bank. It's a long list. I'm not going to name everyone, but all of you were really grateful once again. We've accomplished some terrific media exposure as well this last year, and we put some of the URLs in case some of this is new to you. We've tried to inform you in our regular eBlast newsletters about some of this, but you can certainly, at the end of this presentation, I will give you a URL to download all of these PowerPoints, so don't feel it necessary to try to scribble all of this down at the moment. You will be able to download these slides. But we were recently featured on Channel 7 just earlier this month. That's a local TV ABC affiliate station. And Ron Majors, who's well known to folks in Chicago, had a little segment about our tutoring with one of our great volunteers from Microsoft, Rebecca Mead. And those of you who haven't seen that, we will try to run that at the very end of this webinar, but if you've seen it, feel free to disconnect at that point. We were featured on Channel 9 in Washington, D.C. as well in May. Great story there. It talked about both. Whoops, I see there's a misspell here on school. Here we're trying to teach reading, and that should be S-C-H-O-O-L. Apologies for the typo. But we had great coverage there. Both of these segments cover not only our online tutoring, but our second core program that many of you know about, which is our TutorMate program, where many of the kids in our rooms use handheld devices to get literacy support, reading support, working in much smaller groups, and that's been working not only in the U.S., but we deploy the TutorMate system to other countries, such as in Africa and South America. We were featured on the online magazine known as Good Is. We and about 7 or 8 other innovators. Seth Lamberger, who you'll hear from in a moment, was featured in that short piece about future learning. I'd urge you all to take a look at this 10-minute short documentary about what the future is for students in terms of technology and what new skills the 21st century is requiring from students versus the skills that we might have thought were critical, particularly in the 20th century, and how the technology is changing the imperatives for students to learn new skills. We were covered in some hard copy press, New York Times, Chicago Tribune, Detroiter Magazine. I want to urge all of you to try to take a look at these stories. Grateful to folks in Detroit at AT&T and also at Team Detroit for terrific coverage in that third piece, Detroiter Magazine. Detroit certainly needs this sort of help, and we are aiming to try to expand in that market as well. There's some great videos that many of you have seen already. I listed those at the bottom. These are produced by us, so they're not truly media highlights in that regard, but you might take a look at them. The URLs are very easy. We have expanded to quite a few districts as well this last year in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago, we were in 4 buildings. We had a terrific impact on the scores, so the district invited us to expand to 24 buildings. With our TutorMate program, 13 of those buildings we were able to recruit tutors for, not all of them, so we have room to grow this coming year in D.C. in those buildings. But the good news is the district has already approved us to expand into 12 more buildings at least. That might grow still. But we do expect to be in 36 buildings, which is about half of all the Washington, D.C. elementaries. So we do need a large tutor headcount for the fall. So those of you who have colleagues at work and you had a great experience, please encourage them to sign up in September when we'll be getting registration and training once again. And if you have colleagues or friends that work for large employers, we are certainly open to adding more employers to the list as well. Chicago, Elgin, Waukegan, 35 buildings. Detroit had 4 buildings. We did a nice pilot in Englewood, Colorado. In Englewood, Colorado, we expect to expand that. We want to thank the Citrix Tutors for that help. LA, as I said, Nestle, and Oakland, Intel has been a big help. And the big news is we do plan to expand in a major way in 2 new cities, really, for us. Seattle, with 34 first-grade classrooms, and Miami. We did have 1 classroom this past year with the help of Chase, but we are expanding that dramatically up to 30 classrooms, as you can see. And Denver has told us that they're going to be adding 8 or 10 classrooms as well this coming year. So many of you attended one of our recent meet and greets, which is the year-end wrap-up party. It's a great opportunity to meet your students face-to-face, as well as his or her classmates and his or her teacher. So just a few photos from some of these meet and greets from all across the country, both in Detroit, Washington, D.C., and in Chicago on the West Coast. So thank you once again for terrific help for all of you. This is just a sampling of the photos that many of you sent to us, and we want to thank you for those as well. So I'm going to turn over the presentation now to Seth Weinberger, our founder and executive director. He's going to spend a few minutes talking to Stephanie Richards, as I said, one of our Oakland teachers, and then we'll talk about our future trends, and then we'll pick it up at the end. I'll come back in at the end and moderate a Q&A for Seth. Seth, can you hear me there? Okay, I may need to mute Seth. Give me 1 second here. Okay. Okay, so Seth, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do hear you very well. And Stephanie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great, okay. Then, Seth, it's all yours. Take it away.
Terrific. Well, I will talk after Stephanie speaks. So, Stephanie, I'd like to turn it over to you. And I guess if you could first describe where you teach and how long you've been teaching, and then talk about how you've been doing with our program.
All right. Well, hello. So I teach at Aikman Woodland, and it is in East Oakland. It's a school that is greatly underfunded, as a lot of public schools are. So when the program came in, I mean, each year we have to cut our budget by insane numbers, and a lot of the programs where kids had the ability to work one-on-one with people, they were cut. So the tutoring program was just an amazing addition to our school. I've taught in Oakland 12, 13 years, and have just watched different programs come and go, but it's just amazing. The kids, when I talked with them about it, they were really excited, and as the program began, I mean, their excitement just grew and grew. They, 6 kids were able to work with tutors, and they quickly memorized when their tutors were calling. They'd be like, my tutor's calling in 5 or 10 minutes. They would look at the clock and just be really ready. And it gave, I chose students who were struggling readers, but also I chose some students who I thought could benefit from that one-on-one attention. And some of my shyest students who really struggled connecting with people, by the end were just talking away to their tutors. Sometimes I'd have to tap their shoulder and say, okay, they have to go. And they'd be like, no, I want to talk to my tutor more. So it was emotionally very rewarding, but also I watched them really grow as readers. And when they weren't doing their tutoring sessions, they were more excited about practicing their reading because they knew they'd be talking to their tutor the next week. So, I mean, on so many levels, it was amazing for my students. And also just, you know, getting that chance to be in front of the computer, because that was something else that was cut from our budget. They, you know, that was really great to see them interacting with technology also. So it really was amazing, and I felt very lucky, and my kids felt very lucky to be part of it.
So Stephanie, what do you think, you know, the impact is in the bottom line in terms of their reading abilities? Do you think the program has an impact this year, and is it the kind of impact that sustains over years, or is it a transitory impact?
I mean, I think especially with first grade, I think it has an impact that they got more excited about reading. And with the growing excitement, that impacts them as readers. You know, definitely it's, you know, and they just having that one-on-one attention where, you know, because I do small group reading, but I don't get to have that one-on-one interaction and that one-on-one feedback. And I think, you know, and the tutors, from what I heard, were very positive. So positive interactions with reading is going to help them grow as readers lifelong. It made them excited in a way where big group reading can't.
And can you say something about their environment? Why don't they get that one-to-one at home or with aides in the classroom? Why is it needed to have one-to-one from a tutor?
Okay, well, first, most 85% of my students are English language learners, and I teach, and you know, my class, we have a bilingual program, and I'm sheltered English. So a lot of the students' parents want to help them with reading, but they do not read in English. So that is one big thing, so that that at-home connection with reading. I mean, they read to their parents, but their parents are, you know, a chunk of the parents aren't able to help them. They listen, they're happy to listen, but they're not able to support in the way that they wish they could. Just budget, we are at a school where 99% of the students are free reduced lunch, and so parents aren't able, as in some schools, to pay for tutoring programs outside of the school. As well as just with our budget cuts, we used to have people who came into the classroom, and I would send the students to the back to read with them. They were kind of like aides, but all that has been cut from our budget. So those opportunities, as well as, you know, we just increase numbers of minutes for math and for language arts, has decreased the amount of time that is open to do those one-on-one things with kids, as well as increased class sizes.
You mentioned that the students by the end of the year are talking much more fluently and more communication to their tutors. Does that transfer to other people they talk to? Does it make them more communicative generally, or just to the tutors?
I mean, the students usually, I mean, the shy students who come in do grow, but I do believe, especially with two of the students, I do think it transferred. Because, you know, in the beginning, they would just sit there, and whatever the tutor answered, they'd send a quick, like they'd just say a quick response, as little as possible. And those students by the end were actually full-on having conversations, and I do believe that another opportunity to communicate with someone that they didn't know did help in their communications with others.
So for the over 100 people listening to this, these are not canned questions and answers. We have not spoken like this before, Stephanie, and maybe that'll be more obvious by the next question. What about the kids who are not tutored? Do they feel jealous? Is there any negative impact to them? Are there any positive impact? Does the fact that there are tutors participating in this help them, hurt them? What's the impact?
Well, they did feel, some of the students did feel a little bit jealous. So then I chose the students who answered the phone. I tried to choose the students who are feeling, you know, a little bit left out, and they've felt left out before because they're some of my, you know, highest readers, highest mathematicians, and a lot of the times they feel left out in all the intervention and all this extra work. But no, I mean, the kids, which is part of, you know, my classroom is a community, so we've really worked on feeling excited for each other no matter what. So, I mean, yes, there was some jealousy, but they would get excited when they heard the phone ring, even though it wasn't for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd yell. And they actually seemed to memorize the schedule much better than me. And they'd yell, you know, so-and-so, it's your tutor calling. So it was cute. I mean, I wish I could have had, you know, more students have this amazing experience. You know, it's hard as a teacher to see, you know, to select who gets to have this really awesome positive experience and who doesn't. So I think it might have been harder on me.
So some of the teachers express skepticism or concern at the beginning that it's going to be intrusive to the classroom to have a phone ringing and the kid being pulled out. What was your experience on that?
That was a concern at first, but the times, I think I was lucky with the times that tutors called. A lot of those times were workshop times, so it was really easy to, you know, when the student was done, have them catch up or, you know, have a student buddy up to share with them what they missed. So, you know, maybe the first couple weeks it was a little bit of a struggle, but by the end it just was just part of the classroom. You know, kids are pulled out for different things throughout the day, so it's something I'm kind of used to.
Mm-hmm.
So.
In your dream world, how could this program be made better? And in particular, do you feel like there's enough communication between you and the tutors as to what's going on with the students? And if not, you know, what would you like to see, and how could they help you, you know, work as more as a team to collaborate on how that child is reading?
In my dream, yeah, that's one thing that I really, really would love, more communication with the tutors. We had that one session where I got to talk to 4 of the 6 tutors, and that was really helpful, just with simple tweaks. One thing that really shifted things for my kids was getting a picture of their tutor. So in my ideal world, I would have a photo and a little bit of information to kind of talk with my student before about who their tutor is a little bit. So, because that, you know, it's just the stranger calling, and if I had a little bit of information, one tutor sent a picture of herself with her dog, and that shifted everything. My student was like, wow, she has a dog. She's not just this person on the end of the line. She's a human being who has these interests. So that would be amazing. And yeah, it would be nice to have maybe a monthly quick check-in with the tutors. We did send emails back and forth, but you know, that one time that we talked, one of the tutors was like, oh, well, you know, their reading's growing, and they saw something different than I saw. And I think if there was a, you know, more communication, they're getting this really special time, this one-on-one half hour a week that I don't get with my student. So they're seeing things I'm not seeing. So I think that there's ways that they could help me grow, and I could help them grow in their connection. So I think a conversation would be amazing. Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. We're going to give a chance in 15 minutes from now to have anyone on the line ask you questions as well by typing them in. But is there anything else you want to say at this point to wrap up?
I just thank you, and thank you for everybody involved, because, I mean, in this climate with education and what's being taken away from students, I just felt really, it was a really positive experience to be able to bring something innovative and just really strong and supportive and great for my students. So I just feel very grateful, and thank you.
Well, thanks very much for participating both during the year and in this webinar. And I guess it's a good lead into what I was going to say generally, because, you know, we think of these things in terms of how is this program good for the students, and then, you know, how is this good for the tutors themselves? But there's obviously, and you can hear this from Stephanie so much, an impact on the classroom, and even more than the classroom. We've had a lot of conversations with principals, and these budget cuts are so brutal that to actually have this community support means a lot to them. And particularly some of our schools in the South Bronx, places where tutors just don't go, and they just can't get some of the programs that they hear about in their Manhattan schools. This is true in LA and Chicago. It just means that they're not forgotten, and there's just so many bad stories in the press about the state of the schools and the state of teaching, and you get a sense sometimes that you're really isolated and alone and unloved. So to have this corporation just take you on, not just to sort of come in and make a donation and paint a fence, but to actually work one-on-one with kids, and not just 3 or 4, but 10, 20, 30, 40 people from a corporation coming in and working with your kids in your school every week. You can't put a price on that. That is just huge, and so I hope those who are attending here get a little sense of that from Stephanie. The other thing that has struck me is the impact on tutors themselves and maybe the corporations they come from. I attend the parties every year, and I'm always amazed when I hear stories of tutors who talk about consciously changing their tutor time to Friday because they just want to ensure that they end their week on a high note, and this is just such a high for the tutor that they just want to make sure that it's included in their Friday, and that just gives you a sense of how powerful this can be when the sessions are going right and they're making progress with their students. So it's really a win-win, and that's it's an exciting part of our program. I want to address, because I am sure every one of the 100 people on this webinar had a technical problem of one sort or another, and I just want everyone to know we work very hard to try to resolve these, and we're instituting all sorts of things for the future. Some of the problems do relate to implementation on the school side, and not every teacher is Stephanie's level of cooperation, caliber, but we're very hesitant to pull this from a teacher that's struggling with it, because some of these teachers are the ones who need the program the most. So we apologize to any tutors that may have been working in classrooms where it was a struggling situation with a teacher, but we hope you recognize that it's really just as important, or maybe more important, to work with some of these teachers who do struggle. Beyond the problems in the classroom, there's all sorts of problems with the technology, and the biggest one was the problem of the phone either not being answered or being busy. So we've actually gone to the expense this year, this summer, of building our own device, and it's quite unique. It's an internet ringer, basically, and it's just an extremely simple device, which is part of the attraction to us. All it does is plug into an outlet, and that's it. And it's configured once to say whose classroom it is, and all it does is it polls the internet every 30 seconds to just indicate that it's here, it's alive, it's on the net. And so then in September, on the tutoring interface, the way tutors will actually start is just press a button on the screen that will cause that ringer to ring. And what this does is it basically eliminates a lot of points of failure in what the current ringing system was. In the current system, not only did the internet have to be working in the school, but the computer had to be turned on. It had to be properly configured to the output device. device had to be, the speaker device had to be properly plugged in. It had to be turned on. Sometimes the kids would turn it off or whatever. There was just too many things that could go wrong in that system. So now the only thing that can go wrong is the internet access in the school. As long as there's internet access, and of course if there isn't, there's nothing we can do that day. But as long as the internet access is on, there should be a ring. And that will then enable the teacher, at least, to get their kids onto the computer and get through that bottleneck. And as then many of you have probably seen in our announcements, we are making a big shift in our platform, which has been syncing, as you know, rather than screen sharing. And we've decided to use Join Me as our screen sharing platform for next year. And what that means is that you no longer are syncing at all. Instead, the student is just always seeing what's on your screen. And so you will pull up our tutoring system, and whatever you do on the screen will be seen in real time by the students. Join Me is one of 3 or 4 nationwide, actually global systems for intercommunication, and it's very robust. We're quite excited to have created a partnership with them. They're extremely excited to be using their technology for good. In this case, they have as clients almost all of your corporations, but they're very excited to have some of the senior people and really everyone in the organization using Join Me in this way to really help the community. So hopefully that's going to resolve a number of the syncing, calling problems that we've had. Another thing, we are going to try, as Stephanie mentioned, to have photos next year, not only so that they'll be able to see you and your dogs, but also that you'll be able to see the kids. We will continue the innovation we had this year of having a webinar with the teacher, and maybe, as Stephanie suggests, more than one, but we want to be respectful of the time commitment on the tutor side. But we do think that there are opportunities to improve the communication between tutors and teachers. We've gotten a lot of feedback that the tutors would like more communication. We've gotten feedback from the teachers that they would like more communication. So we want to make that happen. And then we're going to trial one more new thing, which is second grade participation. We desperately want all tutors to take on new first grade students each year to keep the program going and to serve the first grade students. This is where the rubber hits the road in reading is first grade. But we've heard from a lot of tutors that they would like to keep participating in some way with the students who they've had who are graduating into second grade and potentially even into third grade. So what we're going to be experimenting with is asynchronous communication with your tutors, with your students in second and later grades, where basically you become more of pen pals online, and you're writing sort of progressive stories with each other, where you'll take a turn writing on our create a story module that we have online, and then your student will have a chance to write, and you'll basically get an email message that the student has written a new page, and then you can write whenever you have time, and it'll just go back and forth. And when you're finished, these will go to the teacher, and if the teacher approves the story, it'll be posted on a website that parents and grandparents and tutors and everyone else can see. We'll experiment with this first with just a few corporations and see how this works, and if it does work, we'll open it up to more tutors and corporations later in the year. The only other thing I want to say is as most of you know, Dan is showing here our new website look. If you've been to our website, it was getting a little old in the tooth, so this is what the new one's going to look like. Our color scheme is red and white and black, and it's you're going to be able to come onto this page and learn a lot about both tutoring and TutorMate. And that was the last thing I wanted to say, is most of you know tutoring is just part of what we do in the schools. The other thing that we do is our TutorMate differentiated instruction system, where we bring in iPod touches and iPads and next year Android devices and also PCs and Macs, and the students, there's the same stories that you're working with your students. They're also using those stories and reading those stories on the iPod touches or iPads or online. And then there are all sorts of word games that they play with the words in the stories, somewhat like the word games that you play with tic-tac-toe. And it's all managed by the teacher. The teacher goes online and differentiates instruction for every student, so that when the student turns on the iPod, it's basically an individualized lesson plan for the student for that half hour. When you look at our entire system, it has had both the tutoring and the teaching together, the TutorMate, the coaching that we do. It has a fundamental impact on reading in the classroom. We don't look at these things as isolated in individual activities. We look at it as a system, and the system is unbelievably effective. And we know that from how kids read. We know that from the teachers at the end of the year. But of course, our funders and the district administrators want to know that from reading scores. And we use the school's own reading assessments. These kids are assessed way too much already, so we don't add our own assessment. They are tested beginning, middle, and end of year in first grade, which is a lot. And but we use that end of year assessment each year to see how our system is doing compared to before we came into the system, into that school. And the scores are stunning. We just got the DC scores, and we had a 12-point gain in the entire cluster of schools that we were working in Southeast Washington. This is a very poor, underserved district. For those of you who are familiar with reading score gains, and you read about them in the papers every year, if you get a 2 or 3 point gain that you can sustain over 2 or 3 years, it's a home run. When you get a 12-point reading gain, it's hard to describe how important that is to an entire district, to an entire class. So, we are just really excited about the impact that we're making, and we hope that the tutors sense that they're part of a bigger system that they play a very important role in, and that as a total system has a huge impact. So those are my comments. If anyone has questions, please type them, and Dan will read them and we'll answer them.
Great, Seth. Thank you very much, and Stephanie, thank you too. So what I'm going to do is open the floor for questions that are already. So there's 2 ways we can do this. Some of you have typed in questions, and I'm going to relay those to Steph, and if they're for Stephanie, that's great as well. I know we had called this session for 45 minutes. It may run over about 5 minutes, but we do want to try to keep the schedule as much as we can. If some of you do need to depart because you had that time blocked, that's okay. We certainly understand. The recording will be made available as well as the PowerPoints. In fact, what you'll see right here, I'll mention it now, this is where you can go for some of the PowerPoint slides that you're seeing here, tiny.cc/IFL0621 for June 21st. And that'll allow you to download these slides right away. And one other quick announcement, which is when I showed the list earlier of participating corporations, one of the last, but certainly not the least, corporation to join on board in this whole effort in the D.C. area was Boeing, and I inadvertently omitted them, so I want to say thank you. And I particularly recognize Boeing because they, my understanding is they brought some terrific space travel books to to all of their kids as well, and we heard great feedback from the teachers. So thank you to everyone on the call from Bowling in the DC area. So Seth, I'm going to go ahead and start some questions. Let me get to the right slide here. At the very end, I'm going to run this quick video on Channel 7. If you've already seen it, then go ahead and disconnect at that point. But let's get to the questions. As I said, first I'm going to read the ones for people that typed questions to me, and then if some of you want to ask your question orally, you can raise your hand, and we can invite those as well. So first of all, Seth, from Mary Leaguer, does the IFL program ensure that the teachers in the classroom are willing to participate? Several tutors in our area were underutilized or not at all because the teacher was unwilling to enable the process and kept putting up occasional roadblocks. Some volunteers never got to work with their student, or maybe only one time. Any comments, Seth?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my remarks, we have a wide range of teachers. Some of them get it immediately, some of them take a little while, and we're reluctant to pull it from a teacher that's having trouble too quickly. But I will say that part of what aggravates the problem is a poor monitoring system on our part this year, that sometimes we just didn't know that somebody wasn't tutoring 4 or 5 times in a row. And we're creating a new monitoring system as well for September, so we'll have a much better handle as to when tutoring is not happening. And if we see that tutoring isn't happening, with 3 or 4 tutors just aren't tutoring at all, we're going to be much more proactive in terms of finding out why, and hopefully not having sort of widespread problems within a classroom, which happened before.
Great, thank you. Instead of pictures, why not just use webcams? That's from Terry Hill.
So two main problems, well, 3 main problems with webcams. One is a confidentiality problem. Not all the students who are not in the tutoring have permission. Some of the teachers feel like it's too intrusive to sort of be watched, even if it's just going to be on the side and things like that. A number of the corporations block video completely, so it just wouldn't work at all in those corporations. And then it just is a bandwidth hog, which can very much hurt the audio transmission. For all of you who have done Skype calls, you see that there is often points of failure because of the video, and it's just so important to us. There's enough points of failure, let me put it that way, in our system that we don't want to add one. But all of that being said, we have talked about having certain times of the year when we would do video, and so that you would have a chance to see the kid more in a video way. All the students who have iPod Touches, the iPod Touches have a camera in them. We could use them, even though the computers they use, most of them don't have webcams. The iPod Touches do. So we could do it if the corporation allows it. And even if the corporation doesn't allow it, if the tutor has a smartphone, then they could do it. I mean, FaceTime is now going to be over cell networks as well, so there's no way for the corporation to block that as long as you have a decent enough signal. So we will be experimenting with more video next school year.
Great, thanks. Gene Carlson asked, of course, will we receive a copy of the presentation? And I mentioned that, Gene, once again, that if you go to this URL right here, you can download a copy of this presentation at your leisure there. So next question is from Susan Martin. The Coast Guard has many protections built in on Internet access. Does Join.me require significantly greater access than the syncing mechanism did this current year?
Yeah, so we've tested Join.me with a lot of our organizations already, and we have encountered 1 or 2 problems. Some of the banks have a lot of issues. So we will have sort of backup solutions for those organizations that can't use Join.me. although our first preference is to work with their IT organizations to see if we can get an exception and to work with Join Me. I mean, Join Me goes to just about every major corporation in one way or another. We will obviously have our existing system as a backup. We'll also be exploring, I mean, Join Me also works cellular-wise to your smartphone, so you can potentially use it that way as well. So for the few organizations that just we can't get to Join Me, we'll have some alternatives.
Very good, and we do expect, I'll interject as well that we hope that right now all of you are using GoToMeeting, which is another leading platform in this area. So if your organizations are allowing Citrix GoToMeeting, the odds are that if they do take the time to study Join.me, they would probably what we call whitelist it as well. Sometimes they just, they block out everything until they've had a chance to review it. So those of you who are coordinators, Susan, I know you're one, if you could help us even bring this to the attention now, that might give us more time over the summer to have your IT organizations understand that that's the direction we're headed, and the odds are more likely that they should have finished their evaluation by early September so that we can hit the ground running in the fall.
Dan, since you mentioned coordinator, I just wanted to say one thing to the nearly 100 people who are on this webinar still. You folks are either coordinators already, or you're obviously interested enough in our online tutoring program to have done it all year and to be on this webinar. This is a program that's clearly growing by leaps and bounds. We're going to be in so many corporations next year. But for the program to really have sustainability, we need to grow within each corporation. It's not enough to just keep amassing corporations and organizations and Coast Guard and Department of Homeland Security. We need to get sustainable within the corporation. And that, in the end of the day, requires leadership within the corporation. Somebody or a couple of people have to step up and really light the fire within the organization and get the word out and have lunch and learns and get all their friends and talk it up. When that happens, we can get hundreds, I can imagine thousands of tutors within an organization, and then it starts to feed the buzz off of itself. But there's no way we can really expand within a corporation without the leadership within. So for all of you who have been coordinators, we really appreciate it. For all of you who really care about this system and really like it but haven't sort of stepped up to coordinator role, we urge you to do it and help us. That's the biggest help you can give us.
Okay, great. I do have a bunch more questions, so I do anticipate we'll probably be going another five or 10 minutes, and I do, we want to try to get through all of them, and if some of you have to disconnect again, we understand that, but many of you who've taken the time to ask questions, I know Steph is certainly patient enough to answer them for you, so we'll continue through the list. Paul Fields asked Steph, how do the teachers use the weekly logs that the tutors submit?
So we do know that some of the teachers read them, not all of them by any imagination. We read them as well, which can sometimes be as important, because then we'll notify a teacher if we see something going on with the logs. Again, this is part of the general issue of communication, which I think, the bottom line with teachers are they are extremely busy. And so getting them to look at something, go online, and really read through a lot of comments, some of them are going to do it, but certainly not all. And so the idea of more webinars, more oral communication with some of these teachers, I think is going to be even more important than the written log.
Great. Thanks. And Omar Marrero, who I know well, has been a great help leading this effort at our partner Nielsen Company, is asking, can you provide any reading point gains for Chicago?
We don't have final numbers from Chicago yet. We know it's going to be at least a 2-point gain in the one area that we kind of concentrate in Chicago, but even that is kind of preliminary numbers, so please don't quote that. The DC numbers come so fast because they are just so interested in expanding our system in DC. We already work with 40% of the first graders in the DC public schools, and they've already said that because of the success, next year we're going to be working with 60%. That's pretty good penetration for a Chicago-based nonprofit to have it. So I wish I could get numbers that fast out of Chicago. That bureaucracy doesn't quite work the way the DC bureaucracy works.
Okay. And Lee Walton is asking, how is the mouse control tool progressing? I think that might be the issue, the feature maybe where tutors can disable the mouse, which we did add, right, Seth?
Yeah, I mean, in the new system, that won't even be an issue at all because you will basically be controlling who the presenter is. So that issue will just go away under Join Me.
Ida Riddle is asking about, can the students or perhaps the whole classroom visit the tutor's place of work as a field trip? This might be a way to get all the children more involved.
Well, we've talked about that. We just talked about it 3 weeks ago in a staff meeting. I'd like that to happen. I got a lot of pushback from the staff. You know, there's a lot of logistics to make that work. And the teachers do have some concern about the amount of field trips and whether that's, you know, taking away time to do that would be justified as much as going to a museum or things like that. You can make an argument that seeing the real working world would be eye-opening to a first grader. So it's certainly not something we're disregarding, but it's I'm not going to promise that as something for next year, but we keep talking about it.
I'm sure even you know, in some individual cases, you know, organizations can talk to the school principals, and I mean, I do think that if the principal and teachers are on board, no one here at IFL would object. We're just concerned that that support might not be too forthcoming in many cases. Rob Dynick was just mentioning that if the webinar is recorded, which it is, I think it'd be great to share with the corporate affairs folks at many of these organizations. And I think that's a great suggestion, Rob. We're going to do just that. In fact, I think Tim Siegel is asking just a comment. I agree with the earlier comment that a touch-based meeting with the teachers is beneficial, which I know is something that we added recently this year. So that usually after we launch a new tutor team, we're going to be trying. We've done this in some cases this year, not all. But I think that as a matter of structure, we intend to be sure that every new tutor team has at least an oral conversation with their teachers, probably somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks into their launch, depending on how soon you start. We hope that many of you, I know many of you started in the spring, and our goal here, of course, is to start everybody who's already a prior tutor to launch all of you much sooner in the year, hopefully in sometime in October. Robert Centino is asking, it'd be wonderful to hear Stephanie, it was wonderful to hear how Stephanie stated that the program can be improved by tutors providing pictures and information. I agree that that's a great idea. Okay, thanks for that comment, Robert. Ann Quinlan is asking, when we ended our sessions, we had just moved to level E. My student told me she was on level G. I used all the level D books before moving to level E. Is there a way to stay more in sync with where the classroom is, meaning where the teacher believes the student to be? Any comments there, Steph?
Well, so the teacher is supposed to, especially if they're using the TutorMate system, then they have to identify the reading level that they believe is appropriate for the student at any given time. So the first thing that all tutors should be doing before they tutor is to look at that level and to stay with that level. But that being said, as Stephanie mentioned, and you hear this from a lot of teachers, sometimes the tutors no more than the teacher as to the appropriate level. They're working one-on-one with the student, and the teacher isn't. I mean, for the 20 years that we've been doing this, we've often found that we know more than the teacher does at any given moment, and it's not because the teacher's incompetent, it's just we have better information. So to the extent that you feel like the student is capable of reading at a higher level, or is incapable of reading at the level they're assigned and need to be at a lower level, we give the tutors the discretion to change the level. But what you should do is in the tutor log identify that. So if a teacher wants, a teacher could see it and vehemently disagree with you and say, no, this really is the level, and you should stay with that level.
Okay. Then also you have a question. I think we omitted another organization too, Seth. I'm just reminded, RTC from the Chicago folks. I want to thank everyone at RTC. Thanks, Gene, for pointing that out as well. And then Sharon Pierce asked, I have friends, and I might tackle this question. I have friends who have their own businesses and do not work for large corporations but are interested in tutoring. Is there any way that they can volunteer through our program or individually on their own? Certainly, up till now, our policy has really been to try to recruit larger corporations because we like to try to assign, about 10 tutors to a single classroom, and then they adopt, so to speak, that classroom, and then at the end of the year, all the tutors visit that classroom. So it's a great cohesion building event for these employees of organizations, and it also allows us to work much more in a wholesale model. We're not a big organization, as you could see, so we're not really equipped to answer all the questions that are going to come up as new people learn about the tutoring program. So our coordinators help us serve that. So for that reason, we've tended to really shy away from really bringing on individual tutors, 1 or 2 or 3 here. We like to have ideally a minimum of about 15 to 20. We'll sometimes go with 10, but that tends to be the minimum or so. Now, in the past, if they want to join your particular group and work for your coordinator, we are going to be starting criminal background checks. Seth, I'll let you comment about that for a second, and then so that was the other reason too we've been working with corporations, because all of our employees and major employers have been through the criminal background check just through their own onboarding process at their workplaces. So we didn't need to duplicate that, but we might start to add our own criminal background check process. So we don't have a final answer for you on that question, Sharon, but it might be a little bit more possible, particularly if they want to affiliate with your organization. Seth, any additional comments there?
Only that, yes, we will be adding criminal background checks. In the past, we've relied on the corporations to check themselves, but as we're starting to get some people who are not affiliated with the corporation, we've engaged a service. You won't have to give us your Social Security number. You'll be able to do this all online in a very private and secure way, and hopefully none of you have criminal records.
Okay, very good. So Ida Riddle asked, how do we express interest in becoming a coordinator? Ida, just email me. Absolutely. If we don't have a coordinator already at your organization, or you're in a different city, then we have a coordinator. Dana Jennings is on the call. She's been a real help with Microsoft in D.C. We have a peer of hers in Chicago, Mary, and now we're moving into the Seattle area. So many companies have different coordinators in different cities, so we welcome that. Ida, just drop me an email, dan@innovationsforlearning.org. Lee Walton asked, the gains in D.C., can we get a breakout by individual schools?
Yes, we'll be issuing a full report that will show it school by school. And it will be, if the full report is not on our website, if you email Dan or any of us, we'll get it to you.
Yep, that'll probably be available about a month from now, Seth? Or what?
Yeah, okay. A few weeks, actually.
A few weeks. And then Yvette Pittman is asking, at our school, the teacher has between 30 and 32 students. He did not respond back to my observations, but I think that was due to classroom size. You have suggestions as to what, if anything, as a tutor we can do to assist further beyond tutoring?
Well, I mean, we leave it open to the corporation and to the tutoring group as to anything more they would like to do with the school. Part of the benefit of all of this is if a corporation sort of adopts a school, then there are all sorts of more things you can do. You can provide books. Some corporations provide codes. Some corporations actually then have people come in and tutor, face to face. We can't, as a small organization, support all of these other initiatives. It has to be directly from the corporation to the principal that we would like to do more, and then start that up. We have to stick with our knitting of the online tutoring.
Good point. And I'll add that I've reached out to some organizations. Some of you on this call have pre-existing relationships with schools. The Nestle folks, when I approached them with this program, we were originally going to pair them up with a different school, but they said we've already adopted 8 or 10 elementaries in the LA area, and we'd like to actually add your program to our portfolio of activities that we're using to support that school. And so they introduced us to their principal. People's Gas did the same thing here in Chicago with Waters Elementary, and of course in Washington, some of the law firms we're already working with the schools like Carl and Moore and Paul Hastings and DLA Piper. So I would just echo what Seth said there, that we're, if you want to, if you have a separate relationship with a school, then our program could simply be one more feature in the activities that you use to support that school. Okay, I think. I guess it says Lee Walton asked, how do we? This is the last question. How do you pursue the participation of schools across the country? What approach? What style do you use to recruit new schools?
Well, it happens 2 ways. Sometimes we go to an individual school, and that may happen because a corporation that we are recruited already has a relationship with a particular school, or because a principal we know in one city knows a principal in another city, so we're just going to a particular school. In our preferred way is to go actually through the district itself. So in Seattle, in Miami, in D.C., in Chicago, that's all happening district-wide, and then they pick the areas they want this to be served in. They pick the principals. The key, again, is we're trying to be part of a bigger system here. It's not just the tutoring. We want to have a system-wide impact, and the only way you can do that ultimately is to go through the district.
Very good. Okay, everyone. Thank you. That we did run over much further over than we figured. This is we didn't do something like this last year, so we'll budget more time for this next year and advertise it as a 60-minute event. Even still, we're over 60, 65. So I will run this quick video. It's a 3-minute, little less than 3-minute news story, just from about 2 weeks ago here in Chicago, which features one of our Microsoft volunteers here in the Chicago area, and it's a great story. And I think if those of you, we've got about 60 people left here, so please feel free to listen in. It may not play back ideally, so if you want to run the story yourself, you can simply go to this URL, and it'll probably play back a little bit easier than I'm going to do right now, but I'll give it a shot, and then we'll wrap it up at the end of that. Thank you again, everybody. We hope that you have a great summer. We do plan to wrap up. Once again, we'll start formal recruitment in early September, more informal recruitment in July and August, and I hope to have all of you and your colleagues and friends tutoring actively come October of this year. Okay, so stand by here.
They're making their way into the hands of some Chicago Public School students, and not so they can download the latest hit songs. It's part of a program to help them learn to read. The learning system was developed by a Chicago attorney who says it's how he shows his spirit of giving. 7-year-old Rodnisha Cobbs needs help with her reading, and she enjoys interacting on the computer.
Nice! Because I get to read it with two sets up.
While she sits in her classroom at the Ella Flagg Young Elementary School on Chicago's West Side, she's getting that help from an executive who's in her own downtown office.
I can tutor from my office. I can tutor from home. I tutored from a meeting in Seattle when I was traveling for work. So the flexibility is what attracted me to the opportunity.
Rebecca Mead is a technology strategist at Microsoft. Using a system similar to Skype, she connects with Rodnisha for a half hour each week.
So we go page by page. She reads to me. I help her sound out words. We go over the things that she struggles with. And then at the end, we get to play games, and she always beats me in tic-tac-toe, and it's fun.
Other students in her first grade class are getting personalized lessons using Ipods. The school principal says it's a concept that gives teachers and students additional support.
Now the instruction has gone from group to really individualized instruction just for a particular student. And so this program allows for all of those things to happen in one classroom.
The program is called Innovations for Learning. Seth Weinberger developed the program several years ago in his spare time, first using a handheld device he called TutorMate. He recently shifted his focus full-time to the nonprofit venture.
It just became impossible to be both a practicing lawyer and running this thing, and so I had to make a choice. And I mean, the bottom line was I felt like there were enough lawyers and there weren't enough people doing this, so I chose this.
The literacy-based programs are used in kindergarten through second grades across the United States and in several developing countries. Organizers can immediately monitor students' progress.
We know what's happening in the classroom almost every day because everything that they're doing in the classroom is being synced back to the internet. So when we use iPod touches in Rwanda, we know in Chicago the next day how these kids are doing in Rwanda. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
The Innovations for Learning programs come at no cost to the schools. The iPods, software, all paid for by corporate sponsors. For more information about the program or to find out how you can become a volunteer tutor, go to our website, abc7chicago.com.
Okay, everyone, that is okay. Sorry about that audio. Thanks again, everyone, for participating. Stephanie Richards, thank you for your support as well today on the call. Seth, obviously, thanks to you as well, and all of you have a great summer, and we'll be connecting again early in the fall. Bye-bye now.